I'll tell you now, and it begins on April 30th, 1945. The head of the SS here in Prague gets on the radio, and he sends out a warning, and the warning goes something like this: any uprising will be bathed in a sea of blood. Serious. A few days later, on May 5th, the radio comes on in the morning at 6 a.m. like it always does, and the announcer begins his broadcast with giving the time, like he always does. He says, it's 6 o'clock. But on this day, he says it a little differently. He says, je 6 hodin. And that's strange because it's a mix of Czech and German. So this is the signal to the resistance who've been secretly organizing themselves, gathering ammunitions, and this is on the radio, so the Nazis hear it too, and they know what it means just as well. So they send 90 SS troops to the radio building at 11:45 a.m. They are arriving with the goal of taking control of the airwaves away from the resistance. But the resistance keeps on broadcasting, and a few minutes later at 12:10 a.m. the police arrive. And by now the police have pledged their allegiance to the resistance. So heavy fighting breaks out, this massive firefight inside the radio building that lasts for 18 hours. And even today you can hear clips from broadcasts on that day online. And you can hear the fighting in the background. But the Czechs keep control the whole time. They keep on broadcasting and more help comes. But these resistance fighters can't just waltz in the front door, can they? There's a heavy firefight inside. So they manage to break in through the roof. That actually proved to be a really good move because from there they're able to force the Nazis all the way down into the basement. And that proved to be a good place to have them because from there they took fire hoses and thread them in through the air vents and they flooded the Nazis into surrender. So that's inside the radio building. Outside the radio building, the resistance is just as busy. They're setting up barricades on streets around town to impede the Nazis' movement through Prague. So they're pulling up the cobblestones, they're making barricades, and by the next day they've set up 1,000 barricades around Prague. I think that's pretty good. That day the mayor pledges his allegiance to the resistance, and the resistance successfully barricades Nazis into their barracks and cuts off their communication, their electricity, their water. And by that evening, the resistance has control of half the city. I feel like that's a damn good first day. Well, the next day, the Nazis decide they want another go at the radio station, and this time they bomb it. But the Czechs move their broadcasting equipment to a secret location, and they keep on broadcasting. This is also an important day because this is the day when the Czechs get an important piece of news. And the news is that the Americans have reached Pilsen, our favorite town for beer. It's less than a day away by walking. The Americans are there liberating the city, kicking out the Nazis, and everyone here logically assumes that the Americans will be coming to Prague next. It only makes sense that this would be the next stop on the map. But what they didn't know, and what they wouldn't find out for some time, is that a year prior there was an agreement made between the Allies and the Soviets of who would liberate where. And the agreement was determined by drawing a line down the middle of the map, and everything to the west of the line would be for the Allies, and everything to the east of the line would be for the Soviets to liberate. It was called the line of demarcation, and it happened to be drawn right between Prague and Pilsen. So the Americans weren't coming, the Americans couldn't come. So the next day, things take a turn for the worse, because why do they take a turn for the worse? Because the Nazis are starting to set up their armored and artillery units on streets around Prague. They're preparing to bomb the city. And the Allies, they can't defend against bombs, but help comes on this day from two unexpected places. First, there's a Scottish prisoner of war who has escaped, and he manages somehow to get on the radio and send out a cry for help to the Allies. And even English in a Scottish accent is better for the Allies than Czech, so it's pretty helpful for him to get on the radio and send out this cry for help in English. Secondly, there's a group of Soviets who've actually spent the war fighting alongside the Nazis. Well, it's not that they agreed with Hitler, it's that they disagreed with communism. So they'd taken up arms with the Nazis, fought alongside them the whole time, and on this day they realized, oh crap, we're traitors on the losing side of a war. This isn't going to turn out very well. So they figure maybe they can surrender to the Americans, and maybe the Americans will take it easy on them. But to do that, they have to fight off their Nazi brothers, they have to make their way to the edge of town, and when they get there, they hand off their ammunition to the resistance. brings us to the next day, and the next day the tide turns again, this time in favor of the resistance. Because though the Americans aren't coming, and there's 900,000 Nazis in Prague, the Soviet Red Army is, and 2 million Soviet soldiers are about to arrive. So the Nazis, they need out. They strike a deal with the resistance, and the deal is they can leave the city unharmed if they don't bomb Prague. So that's what happens. In 3 days, 30,000 untrained resistance fighters have essentially liberated their own city. And as great an ending to the story as that is, it's not the end. Because when you see signs around town that mark Liberation Day, they're never listed with May 8th. They're listed with May 9th. Because that's when the Soviets rolled in. And when they got here, they said, "People of Prague, we're here to liberate you!" You know, Czechs are pretty good at the beer thing, and so they probably had a few the night before to celebrate. So they were like, don't worry about it, relax, come have a beer. And so the Soviets say, no, people of Prague, we're here to liberate you. And so they try again, and they say, okay, so yesterday we kicked them out, the Nazis are gone, there's nothing to worry about here, relax. And the Soviets say, people of Prague, you don't understand. We're here to liberate you. And it wouldn't be for a few more years that people here would realize that they had simply traded one dictatorship for another. They had traded Hitler for Stalin, whose statue would stand on that hill until 1962. And then it wouldn't be until 1989 that the blood of freedom that ran from Jan Hus to Jan Palach would finally be realized. And the Czech people could once again call Prague the capital of their own country. And I hope you guys love that story as much as I do, because with that we finish our tour. Thank you guys so much for coming.
Yay.